Welcome back to the show, everyone. It's Dina Calmetta here. And for today's news, I do have some updates I'd like to bring to you. And I first would like to talk about China. It is being reported U.S. warships have sailed in the disputed South China Sea twice in the last few days, angering China. Earlier this week, during high-level talks, China called on the U.S. military to stop flexing its muscles in the South China Sea and also added new uncertainties over Taiwan. The U.S. Navy regularly angers China by conducting what it's called the freedom of navigation operations by ships close to some of the islands China occupies, asserting freedom of access to international waterways. The combat ship Gabriel Giffords traveled within 12 nautical miles of the Mischief Rift on Wednesday, and the destroyer Wayne E. Meyer challenged restrictions on innocent passage in the Paracel Islands on Thursday. China's military confirmed on Friday that the two U.S. warships had sailed through the waterways and said it tracked the passage of the American ships. A spokesman for China's Southern Theater Command said in a statement that we urge the United States to stop these provocative actions to avoid any foreseeable accidents. China has indisputable sovereignty over the South China Sea islands and its surrounding areas. China's foreign minister also voiced anger, saying it had lodged strong representations with the U.S. over the warship's movements, stating on Friday that the U.S. actions severely damaged China's sovereignty and safety and destroy the peace and stability in the South China Sea, and we express our resolute opposition. However, the United States has accused China of militarizing the South China Sea and trying to intimidate Asian neighbors who might want to exploit its extensive oil and gas reserves. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper met with the Chinese defense minister earlier this week, and China's defense minister had urged Esper to stop flexing muscles in the South China Sea and to not provoke and escalate tensions in the South China Sea. Esper has accused Beijing of increasingly resorting to coercion and intimidation to advance its strategic objectives in the region. And we are not only seeing tensions in the South China Sea. Michael Schneider of the Economic Collapse and the Most Important News is reporting that on Tuesday, the Senate ununanimously passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act of 2019. And the House Representatives passed the same bill by a 417-1 vote on Wednesday. Needless to say, the Chinese are beyond angry that Congress has done this. China is warning the U.S. to rein in the horse at the edge of precipice, and that there will be revenge if this bill is allowed to become law. And it looks like this bill will actually become law because Bloomberg is reporting that President Trump is fully expected to sign it. With all of this tension arising, can there be a trade deal with China? Well, according to the Global Times, few Chinese believe that China and the U.S. can reach a deal soon. Given current poor China policy of the U.S., people tend to believe the significance of a trade deal, if reached, will be limited. China wants a deal, but is prepared for the worst-case scenario, or a prolonged trade war. As the two largest economies on the entire planet decouple from one another, it is going to cause global economic activity as a whole to dramatically slow down. And the article goes on to read, we better hope that our trade war with China does not escalate into a real war at some point. According to a report that was released earlier this year, we are very ill prepared to fight any sort of a conventional war with China in the Western Pacific. In addition, the U.S. military officials are deeply concerned by how rapidly China has been upgrading their strategic nuclear arsenal. For example, they now possess a submarine-launched missile capable of obliterating San Francisco. The article goes on to state that the Chinese Navy tested its state-of-the-art JL-3 missile in the Yellow Sea last month. The nuclear-capable missile has a 5,600-mile range, significantly longer than its predecessor, the JL-2, which could strike targets 4,350 miles away. Now, we certainly are not at that point yet, but without a doubt, the Chinese now consider us to be their primary global enemy. For the moment, it's just a Cold War that we are facing. And the Chinese are quite adept at playing global chess. They have lots of ways that they can hurt us. And most Americans don't realize this. But in the end, nobody is going to win this conflict. And the entire planet is going to suffer. The stage is set for a global nightmare. And at this point, it doesn't appear that there is a way that we will be able to escape it. So very interesting report there from Michael Schneider. And I'll leave a link for you guys below this video, so if you'd like to read the entire article, you can do so. But there is no denying that tensions are definitely heightened between the US and China. And as always, I'll continue to follow these reports and bring you updates. But let's move on and talk about Russia, Syria, and Israel. Ynet News is reporting that Moscow has stated that the IAF jets used in Jordanian airspace for strikes on targets in and around Damascus, while they're accusing Israel of causing increased tensions and the potential for conflict around Syria, as well as counteracting our efforts to control the situation. Russia's foreign minister this week decided to embarrass Israel, revealing information about 4 alleged IDF attacks in the past 10 days, even saying that it used Jordan's airspace to carry out one of them. The first airstrike mentioned by the Russians was carried out on November 12 on the home of the Islamic Jihad's deputy leader in Damascus. According to the Syrian news agency, on the day of the attack, Israeli fighter jets arrived over the Galilee and fired 3 missiles at Damascus. The air defense system shot down its targets and managed to destroy the missiles before they hit their objective. The Russians stated that the attack killed and wounded Syrian civilians and caused significant damage to property and buildings. The Russian Foreign Ministry also reported on targets that Israel attacked near the Syrian-Iraq border on November 18th. According to the ministry, Israeli fighter jets reportedly crossed Iraq and the Jordanian airspace. The following day, according to Russia, Israeli missiles struck targets 18 kilometers south of the Syrian capital, and explosions were heard in the area of the Damascus airport. The Russians claimed that this attack was carried out due to Syrian fire on the Golan Heights, but this information is apparently incorrect. According to Russia, on November 20th, the Israel Air Force fired some 40 cruise missiles at targets in the Damascus suburbs. Israel said that this action was taken in response to the 4 rockets fired at the Golan Heights that were intercepted by its Iron Dome missile defense system. Among other targets, the Israeli Air Force attacked positions of Iran's elite force, as well as Syrian anti-aircraft batteries that had launched surface-to-air missiles in an attempt to bring down the IAF jets. Russia said that at least 10 Syrian soldiers and civilians were killed or injured, adding that these events have caused great concern and indignation in Moscow, stating also that we believe that it is imperative to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria and other countries in the region. So far, Israel's actions have increased tensions and the potential for conflict around Syria, and are counteracting our efforts to control the situation and bring about stability and political resolution in Syria. Some very interesting news there coming out of Russia, which is leading us closer to the prophecies of Isaiah 17:1, as well as Ezekiel 38:39. But speaking of Israel, let's have a quick chat about Netanyahu. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faced calls to resign over a corruption scandal on Friday, as senior government colleagues publicly declared support after some signs of cracks in the party loyalty. Netanyahu said that he would not step down after he was indicted on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust of Israel's Attorney General on Thursday night. Netanyahu has denied all wrongdoing and denounced the indictment, the first against a sitting Israeli prime minister, as an unattempted coup. But under Israeli law, he is under no obligation to step down as prime minister. But with Israel heading towards a likely 3rd election in less than a year, Netanyahu could soon find himself in a difficult position of trying to win an election while preparing to be prosecuted. Israel's president on Thursday set a 3-week deadline for lawmakers to nominate a new candidate from their own ranks to try to form a new government after Netanyahu and Gantz both failed to do after April and September elections. If that also fails to produce a government, an election will be triggered in 3 months. So some very disturbing news coming out of Israel right now. And as always, I'll continue to follow these reports and bring you updates. But I would like to talk about Iran just briefly. Earlier this week, it has been reported, the Washington Free Beacon, as well as many other sources, is reporting that the U.S. is deploying additional troops to the Middle East to counter Iran. The Trump administration informed Congress on Tuesday that it has deployed 3,000 additional troops to the Middle East to help combat the growing threat posed by Iran. The troop deployment comes as Iran and its regional terror proxies wage attacks on Israel and U.S. interests in the region. President Donald Trump informed Congress in a letter that the United States Armed Forces have been deployed to the Middle East to protect the United States interests and enhance force protection in the region against hostile action by Iran and its proxy forces. Iran has continued to threaten the security of the region, including by attacking oil and natural gas facilities in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on September 14, 2019. To assure our partners, deter further Iranian provocative behavior, and bolster regional defensive capabilities, additional United States armed forces have been ordered to deploy to the Middle East. A portion of the American forces have already arrived in Saudi Arabia, and the rest will arrive in the coming weeks, according to the White House. Radar and missile systems have also been deployed to help address the threat of Iranian attacks on oil interests. With these additional forces, the total number of United States Armed Forces personnel in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will be approximately 3,000. These personnel will remain deployed as long as their presence is required to fulfill the missions. And the Military Times is reporting that Iran will likely buy new advanced fighter jets and tanks next year, when a UN Security Council arms embargo is scheduled to be lifted. The DIA report concludes that Iran is committed to becoming the dominant power in the Middle East, and it warns that Islamic Republic is making rapid progress developing attack drones and other missile systems. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, an intelligence official said that Iran would probably buy the tanks and aircraft from Russia and China. The U.S. has placed economic sanctions on the Islamic Republic, and those would likely continue even if the UN embargo is lifted. So there is no doubt that we are in the season of wars and rumors of wars, and right there on the cusp of some of these biblical wars coming to pass. So without a doubt, a very interesting week in the news. But I'd love to hear from all of you. So please do leave your comments in the comments section. And also, I rarely give you guys an opportunity to donate to this ministry. If you'd like to do so, I'm going to leave a link in the description below this video. So if you'd like to donate, you can do so. And to all of those that have donated to this channel and ministry, I'd like to say thank you so much. It truly means a lot to me. And it actually helps us pay for the costs of the ministry. So thank you so much. But with that said, please do come and visit us on Facebook. I'd love to see you guys there. And also on our website at www.cww7news.org. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and God bless.